Welcome to another deep dive. We're taking the sources you've sent in and, well, diving deep. You know how it works. Today we're going to explore this whole concept of reincarnation. It's a pretty big topic, right?
Mhm.
And the source we're using is a YouTube transcript from Calogero Grifasi, multi-language.
And this transcript, this one's really cool because it's a conversation. It's Grifasi and his team, and they're talking with a hypnotherapist, Aurelio Mejía.
And this Mejia, he's got a lot of experience to share, right? Like, this isn't just someone starting out. He's been doing hypnotherapy for, like, 30 years.
Decades,
Yeah.
decades of experience,
Yeah.
which is why this conversation is so packed.
Yeah, I mean, they talk about pretty much everything, right? Like the whole idea of a cycle of reincarnation. What even is a soul? You know,
Mhm.
dreams, like what those are all about.
Even things like the Akashic Records, right?
Right.
Like, is it possible to access memories from past lives? And then, of course, the big one.
The meaning of life. Why are we here?
Exactly. What's so interesting for you is that we're not just getting one perspective here. We've got the approach of Calogero Grifasi's team, who seem to be a bit more, let's say, neutral in their hypnotherapy.
They kind of observe, right?
Yeah.
Like they're just there to guide, it seems like.
Yeah, versus Aurelio Mejía, who actually, comes from this uh, background of Franciscan priests and a very religious family.
And he even says now he's an atheist, so.
Yeah, it's this very unique blend of experiences.
Exactly. And we all know how Grifasi's team is always, open to exploring things from all angles, so that should make for some really interesting dialogue.
Oh, definitely. You'll hear these distinct perspectives, maybe some unexpected connections, and who knows, maybe even a few moments where you're like, whoa, that makes sense.
So let's get right into it, and start by introducing Aurelio Mejia a little better. Like I said, he's been doing hypnotherapy for 30 years, so he's obviously well-versed in the field. What really struck me was, like you said, he spent time learning from Franciscan priests.
Right. And now he says he's an atheist.
Yeah, so that's quite a journey. I mean, it shows how he's constantly exploring, right? He's not afraid to challenge his beliefs or the things he was taught.
Absolutely. And his background really comes through when he's discussing things like reincarnation and even Allan Kardec's theories.
Like he's really dug into those ideas.
It's clear he's always searching, always learning.
And then there's this connection with Calogero Grifasi, right? Like, it seems Mejia played a key role in introducing Grifasi to regressive hypnosis. Grifasi was actually one of his early subscribers, helping to translate and subtitle his videos into Italian.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, that shows a really strong connection between them, built on mutual respect.
Definitely. And even though they might have different approaches to hypnotherapy, you can tell there's a real understanding and respect between them.
Yeah, a real shared passion for these deep topics.
Now, diving into the content, one of the first questions that a viewer posed was a really big one. Can the soul evolve to a point where it no longer needs to reincarnate?
Yeah, that's like the ultimate question, isn't it?
And Mejia's answer was pretty powerful, I thought. He brought up Stephen Hawking and the expanding universe and said the answer's not even God has it. I mean, he's basically saying that some things might be just beyond our comprehension.
Right, like our human minds, they might just not be equipped to understand something like that.
Grifasi, though, he had an interesting take, too. He said that in the context of infinity, anything is possible, right? And maybe, like, our rational minds, our logic, it's just not the right tool for trying to grasp something so big.
Like trying to describe color to someone who's been blind their whole life. It's just, it's beyond our experience.
Exactly. He made this cool analogy talking about different languages. If you only speak one language, you can't fully understand the poetry or the nuances of another.
It's like maybe there's a whole other language for understanding these concepts, and we just haven't learned it yet.
Right. Now let's move on to something else that everyone always has questions about. Dreams. A viewer asked if our dreams are, like, giving us clues about past reincarnations.
Yeah, the dream interpretation route. I see where they're coming from.
And Mejia, he was pretty straight up. He said, no, I don't think so. He even said he can't interpret his own dreams half the time because they're so illogical.
And his analogy, oh man. He compared it to those old Byzantine discussions about how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. Like, it's so much speculation, it's easy to get lost in it.
He seemed to think that dreams are more about processing our emotions and experiences from our daily lives.
Yeah, a more grounded perspective for sure.
And I can kind of see where he's coming from. Not every weird dream is a past life memory, right?
Exactly. Sometimes a dream is just a dream.
So let's talk about some actual experiences people have had during hypnosis sessions. Mejia shared a really interesting case, this woman named Salome from Spain. Under hypnosis, she recounted what sounded like a bunch of random past lives, a suicide, a Spanish royal, an autistic girl.
And this one's crazy because at first those lives seem completely disconnected, right? No relation.
But then, as the session went on, everything started to connect. There was this underlying logic to it all. Like her subconscious was holding this whole narrative, and it just needed to be pieced together.
And what's cool is this session, it's actually available online. You can listen to it yourself and hear how everything unfolds.
Grifasi also mentioned another session, an older one, where a person in a wheelchair was able to get up and walk after the hypnosis. Now, we don't have a ton of details on this one, but it still suggests that hypnosis can trigger some pretty powerful shifts, maybe even physically.
Yeah, it's a glimpse into the potential. But of course, we always have to be careful with anecdotal evidence, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's cool to hear about these things, but we need more concrete proof.
Exactly. Mejía also talked about his criteria for when therapy is necessary, like when do you need to go deeper, you know? And he said when you just can't resolve your issues on your own, like in your fully conscious state. That makes sense to me.
It's like saying, okay, we've tried all the regular stuff, time to try something different.
A viewer also brought up a past session with Mejía where a client remembered the moon being created by, like, non-human entities.
Yeah.
Mejía acknowledged this session happened, but was very careful to say that we can't really know the origins of the universe.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that just because someone experiences something in a session doesn't mean it's like a historical fact, right? Like, it's their truth, but it might not be the truth.
And I think that ties in well with the next big question Mejía threw out there. What is the meaning of existence? I mean, that's the question, isn't it?
Talk about a deep dive. That's getting right to the core.
And we got some really different responses from the team. Freddy said that maybe life just doesn't have an inherent meaning. And maybe looking for that meaning actually distracts us from just living.
It's like stop searching and start experiencing.
Yeah, and maybe meaning is something we create, not find.
Our own personal meaning.
Angi, she talked about the meaning being in the connections we have, in the exchange of knowledge and experiences with all forms of consciousness.
The interconnectedness of it all.
Like we learn and grow through each other. Elena, she had a different take. She said meaning comes from our own personal experience, from the sensations of being alive in the physical world.
Appreciating what we can feel and touch and see right now. The now.
Yeah, just being present in the moment. Grifasi, he wrapped it up by saying that meaning is relative. It depends on your individual perspective and your circumstances.
So basically, the meaning of life is there is no one meaning of life.
It's up to each of us to decide.
Which is a pretty big responsibility, if you ask me.
Moving on, there was also a question about the Akashic Records. This viewer wanted to know if it's really possible to access memories from past lives, through the Akashic Records.
And Mejia's response was awesome. He went through all the different perspectives on this. Like, there are the occultists, right? They see the Akashic Records as this kind of cloud, this universal storage of everything.
And then there's Teilhard de Chardin and his idea of the new sphere, the sphere of thought that surrounds the Earth.
And of course, you've got the folks who believe in genetic memory and those who believe in a soul that travels through lifetimes, even like animal lifetimes.
So it's not just human reincarnation, maybe.
Exactly. It's this whole expansive view of what reincarnation could be.
And Mejía did acknowledge that people often have these vivid memories of past lives during regressions, but he said we still don't know for sure what they are. Are they real memories? Are they the imagination? Or maybe something else entirely?
Accessing other dimensions, maybe.
Who knows? It's a mystery. And he really emphasized that each of us has to draw our own conclusions based on the information we have and our own experiences.
Don't just take someone's word for it. Do your own research, your own thinking.
We also got this really cool insight into Mejía's and Grifasi's different approaches from someone named Gloria, who had sessions with both of them. She said Mejía's approach felt very paternal, very welcoming, even though the session was online. It's like she'd been following his videos for so long, she felt this sense of familiarity.
Yeah, like she already knew him. It shows how powerful those online connections can be.
But with Grifasi, she said it was a much more direct experience. She even said he operates without anesthesia, which I thought was pretty funny.
Straight to the point.
But she got great results from both, which I think is important.
It shows that different styles work for different people. Like, some people need that gentle guidance, others need a bit of a push.
Exactly. And Grifasi said that himself, that some people want a softer approach, others want someone who's more, to the point.
And it's about finding what works best for you. It's your journey.
Now, another viewer had a question about this idea of human light and safety. Mejía admitted he wasn't really sure what they meant by human light, but he talked about how, from a reincarnation perspective, everyone starts at a lower level and evolves over time.
So like we're all on this path of growth, right? We're learning and evolving with each lifetime.
Yeah, there's this constant progression. They also touched on death, which is well, kind of a heavy topic.
But a necessary one, I think. We all face it eventually.
And Messiah, being a believer in reincarnation, he sees death as more of a transition, not an ending. He also talked about his own experiences with loss, losing people close to him. It was a really personal moment.
And he raised this really interesting point. Like, before we were born, we were essentially dead, right? So what's up and what's down when you think about it that way? It makes you question everything.
There was also this kind of funny exchange about Angi and whether she's cold.
Yeah.
A viewer commented that maybe she picked up that coldness from Calogero.
Oof, some people just say whatever pops into their heads, don't they?
Yeah, but Angi, she handled it really well. She said that maybe it's just because of all the different roles she has on the team, like tutor, secretary, support, and that she needs to be a bit more pragmatic sometimes.
Like she's got a lot to handle and she needs to be efficient. Doesn't mean she's cold, right?
And Grifasi was quick to jump in and say that coldness isn't necessarily a bad thing. He brought up Gloria and how she really liked his direct approach.
It's about different styles again, right? Like one person sees as cold, another sees as just being, clear and concise.
And Angi said that she's also learned from Grifasi and Freddy, how to conduct sessions effectively.
So she's taken what she's learned and adapted it to her own style. It's all part of growing and evolving, like we were talking about earlier.
To lighten things up a bit, someone asked Aurelio about his secret to looking so young.
The eternal question.
Yeah.
Right? We all want to know.
And he had a really funny response. He said, well, I work at a brewery, but I never drink. I work at a tobacco company, but I never smoke. And then he kind of jokingly dismissed the idea of, frequenting motels.
He's got jokes, but he also said that, not drinking or smoking too much probably helped.
Yeah, keeping it clean, living a healthy lifestyle.
The basics work, people.
Then there was this really strange comment, just Carlos W. Gestapo boo. No one really knew what to make of it.
And I was like, what is that?
Yeah. And Grifasi thought maybe it was because, they had this guest with a different style and maybe some viewers were confused.
Like they weren't used to hearing this perspective.
He compared it to someone questioning quantum physics because it goes against everything they believe. It's like when something challenges your worldview, it can be hard to accept.
It can be a real shakeup.
Well, I don't know about you, but I feel like we just went on a pretty wild ride.
Yeah, I think my brain's still processing everything.
We covered so much ground. From the cycle of reincarnation, to dreams, to actual experiences with hypnosis, to the meaning of life, to the Akashic Records, to death, to, everything.
And the biggest takeaway for you listening is to remember that there are so many different perspectives on all of this. What resonated with you? What made you think? What can you take away and explore further?
Exactly. Don't just accept everything we've talked about as fact. Question it, think about it, do your own research.
And speaking of research, if you want to learn more, the original YouTube video included a link to Aurelio Mejia's channel, and his nephew, Eduardo Mejia, also has a channel. We'll put those links in the show notes, along with Grifasi's social media and website, and Aurelio's website, too.
And it's so cool that the hosts actually went and visited Aurelio in Colombia. It shows how genuine their connection is.
Yeah, and they even had that funny story about how Aurelio was driving way too fast. It sounds like it was quite the adventure.
So to wrap things up, we want to leave you with this. Exploring these deep topics, it's a journey, it's not a destination. Stay curious, keep an open mind, and who knows what you might discover.
Your own personal deep dive awaits.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
See you next time.